to join us as well, but we do have a quorum, so appreciate everybody taking the time here. With that, we've got the agenda here in front of you, I imagine, and we will review and approve it. Are there any comments, questions, edits to the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay. And looks like
Second.
yep, Julie, got a second. Thank you. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Very good. Now on to agenda item 4, review and approve of the February meeting summary. Ms. Abad was able to send out the meeting summary. Are there any questions, comments, edits to the meeting summary? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Benavides, and a second is?
I'll second.
Dr. Gonzalez. Very good. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Agenda item 5, review the process document. You also had a copy of this. Last time, I believe we posted this up on the screen. Did that work okay? And do we want to continue to have me post that and kind of walk through this? Or would you just like to look at it on your own there? Any preferences? Okay, we can go ahead and operate if you just want to follow along yourselves there. If there's any questions or anything, I'm happy to kind of post this and kind of walk through the document basically. So we've got a red line draft that was sent, and appreciate Lindsay taking the time from the AG's office to make some of these edits that you see. We can walk through the document. I do know that we've got some of the, we didn't quite get through the appendices last time, but do we want to start from the top, or how are we feeling with the edits? Are there any questions on particular sections? What would be the board's preference?
No preference, dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. Okay. So why don't we just go ahead and walk through this. Last week when we discussed this document, just as a reminder, what we can do and what we thought about was that we get this in a place that kind of gives us an opportunity to follow a process and give us something to work from. We can sort of approve it temporarily, or we can always come back and edit the document. We think that once we kind of get this in a pretty good place, it'd probably be beneficial just to sort of walk through a couple of proposals, and depending on how that goes, then we can kind of come back and make some necessary edits based on the review of naming and renaming proposals. So I'll just kind of take it to the top. We can work through some of this. The preamble still remains the same, essentially. Lays out that this is the guidance document from within the USBGN purview, addressing the process for the Geographic Naming Advisory Board. There's no other comments on this section. We'll move on to the next under guidance, section 1, both paragraph. I'm sorry here. Let me look at the chat here from Ms. Runyon. Okay, we will make note of that. Thank you very much, Ms. Runyon, in regards to new names. Okay, that's very good. Thank you. We can make those corrections as needed here.
Hang on, Tim.
Yes.
It's a defined term in the document, and it includes new names, but in order to make it shorter and only have one thing that we needed, I'm sorry, it's not coming up for me for some reason. Hang on.
Yep, actually, you've got it in that top paragraph there, Amy. So I see what you're talking about right there. It says such proposals will concern name changes,
Name
new
changes.
names,
Yes.
and
Yep.
name controversies.
And then it's a defined term, and then that term carries throughout the entire document and refers back to that definition, so it does include new names.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out. I overlooked that. Thank you.
You're fine.
Okay, on to the guidance section. Section 1, A and B remained unchanged from our previous conversation regarding those issues. Same with section 2. Do we have any questions about section 1 or section 2 on the guidance? Comments? Okay, moving down to section 3 here. And also, board members, please feel free to unmute yourself and just interrupt me. I'm kind of looking back and forth on one of my other screens here and can't quite keep my eyes. I know Johnny also kind of helped me out. If you want to flag us down or raise a hand as well. Section 3, processes for board consideration of proposals. We had some edits here. A name change proposal will undergo 3 phases of consideration, all of which include written and verbal public comment. The process prior to the proposal introduction is kind of the first step here. After receiving a name change proposal from the USBGN, the board will place, the board administrator will place the proposal on the agenda for the next meeting to introduce the proposal for review by the board. This is referred to as proposal introduction. The board administrator will also prepare and send a brief informational summary to the board members. The informational summary should include, but is not limited to, any submitted materials, written and verbal public comments, preliminary outreach, and research. The following will also occur here during this phase. All relevant information will be posted to the board website, and outreach to the proponent and name change proposal or the applicants will occur to alert the applicants that the process for consideration of the name change proposal they have submitted has begun. Any conversation regarding this proposal introduction? And then subsection B here regarding the proposal introduction kind of just carries this out here, that the name change proposal will be reviewed for the first time at the board meeting following receipt of the proposal from the USBGN. And the following will occur during this proposal introduction phase. One, because of the difficulty in contacting everybody who may be familiar with a particular geographic feature, the board relies upon comments submitted by the public. During the proposal introduction, the board will review the outreach conducted by the USBGN and determine if there's others who should be made aware of the name change proposal. And then between the proposal introduction and the next stage of the process, the board will solicit written and verbal public comments from those additional groups or individuals. Examples of groups or individuals to whom the board should consider reaching out to are in Appendix A. We'll review that towards the end of the document there. And then 2, written and verbal public comment is welcome at this stage, especially comment from the applicants. Moving down here to item number, let's see here, that'd be sort of subsection Roman numeral, small Roman numeral 3, item number 2, considering whether a committee or, I'm sorry, the next step then is that we will identify the next steps for the name change proposal and give some consideration whether we are going to have a board member as sort of the steward of the name change proposal to assist in moving the proposal through the process, or whether we want to consider a committee or task force should be created pursuant to our bylaws to assist in moving the proposal through the board process. The board will consider whether substantial interest exists from tribal governments and other tribal communities to create a proposal committee to perform additional outreach to tribes. Any comments? All right, subsection C. This begins the next phase. This is the first consideration of the proposal. After the board completes the proposal introduction phase, the name change proposal will be ready for its initial review, which will occur at a subsequent board meeting. And during this first consideration, the following will occur. We will consider the criteria outlined in Appendix B. We'll discuss that a little bit later. And then written and verbal public comment is welcome at this stage of the process as well. Any comments, questions? All right, and then once we make it through that phase, we move on to the final consideration. This is the phase of the process during which the board shall decide by vote to approve or deny or table a proposal under final consideration. The voting procedures are outlined in our bylaws. During this final consideration phase, the following will occur. We will discuss the proposal and evaluate the proposal based on criteria outlined in Appendix B. Again, we will continue to welcome written and verbal public comment. And then the board will conduct a vote to approve or deny the name change proposal. And then once we've voted to approve or deny the board proposal steward or the proposal committee, will finalize and compile all relevant information into a package for circulation, which will include but is not limited to the applicant proposal, board recommendation to approve or deny, report drafted by the board, proposal steward or proposal committee summarizing all research, a list of the parties solicited for public comments, and then a list of those that provided public comment, a list of tribal governments and tribal communities solicited for the board by the board for input and public comment, and all public comments made regarding the proposal. I'll stop there and just see if we've got any comment on that section. Yes, Representative Benavides.
I'm just wondering, I was trying to go back to the part where we picked a steward or a committee. What if we don't pick a steward or a committee? Then in this one, should it be the board administrator that prepares all those documents?
Yes, I think, oops, I'm sorry. Did somebody have a comment there?
This is me, Tim. I would put the initial package together from the get-go. And then if we had the committee, then we could add to that package for the rest of the board.
Okay, and so
did that answer the question?
I think so. I think Representative Benavides, if I can just clarify, this is at the final consideration when we vote on this, putting that package together. Then, if we didn't have a board, a proposal steward or a proposal committee, then who will put this together is kind of the ultimate question. And I think yes, that would. We probably is the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this. Does say the board, the proposal steward, or the proposal committee will finalize and compile all relevant information. I think we can clarify in there, Ms. Abad, if you don't mind taking that on. If we don't have a committee or a steward, that you could put that together for us. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So we can make a note of that then, if that works for you, Representative Benavides, to clarify that.
Yeah,
the lack thereof.
that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Everybody good with that? Perfect. Okay, then section 4 here, public comment. Again, just reiterating that we will consider written and verbal public comment concerning name change proposals throughout every phase. Written comments can be submitted at any time in the proposal process up to 2 days prior to the meeting. Board will consider written public comment at the next meeting during which the proposal is considered. There are 2 relevant ways to submit written comments: electronically and by mail. We've got an email address now that we will, I think we've already added it to the website. That is a separate account that goes to Miss Abad to compile those comments and prepare them for us and provide them to the board. And then any interested party who wants to comment on a proposal can also do so by mailing written comments to the board as well. And then anyone who is interested to present verbal testimony to the board during a board meeting are encouraged to submit a notice of interest in providing public comment to the board. It is not necessary. We will have public comment, but they are encouraged just so that we can kind of plan on or understand the level of interest regarding public comment. Provide that 2 days prior to the board meeting at which the commenter wishes to appear. And then the notice should reference the specific agenda item on which the commenter wishes to comment. The board also encourages any interested party to present verbal testimony during a meeting without submitting a notice of interest. So like I said earlier, we will also take public comment on and input on the fly. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to testify, plus additional time allowed by board officers to answer board member questions. Any comment regarding this section or questions? Okay. Section 5 then.
Mr. Chair, it's Rick Garcia. Hey, just quickly, is this only for comment on agenda items, or is this for general public comment on anything related to what this commission might be involved with?
I think this was related specifically to agenda items and proposals, so we can clarify that is how I read this, Rick. And so that would be kind of my immediate answer, and not just in regards to probably general comments of that type of nature.
Okay, as long as that's clear, I just wanted to make sure I understood what the opportunity is for the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we can mark that and clarify that there. Okay. Section 5 is reconsideration of proposals. The board will not reconsider a proposal that we have previously acted upon unless one of the following applies. The board becomes aware of significant new information related to the proposal. The governor orders the board to reconsider the proposal, or the USBGN requests the board revisit its decision. Yes, Representative Benavides.
That B seems awful harsh of the board, the governor ordering the board to reconsider. If we make a recommendation and he doesn't like us, he can order it back. I would say requests might be a little better term than orders us.
I like that. Is everybody comfortable with that change there? Okay, perfect. We will make that change. Yeah, I guess that's kind of interesting. I mean, he could just request us to begin with and we would deny him because it wasn't an order. But anyway, Section 6, forwarding approved names to the governor. We will continue to kind of work this out, but here is the format that we are working with right now. Is the board will forward a proposal's final recommendation package to the governor's office within 10 days of the board's vote to approve or deny the name change proposal. Within 10 days, the governor will comment on, approve, or reject the board's recommendation. The governor may also ask the board to reconsider a recommendation. And then if the governor does not act within 10 days of receiving the board's final recommendation package, the board will proceed with forwarding the final recommendation package to the USBGN for federal consideration. Any comments or questions on this?
I had a question. Is that if we forward it because he doesn't act, can the federal act, or are they going to send it back to us because there's nothing from the governor on there?
So the way we're trying to kind of take this in terms of the communication we've had with the governor's office, that while I think he's in the EO, he's reserved sort of that through the design of this board, that we can kind of remove the middleman unless there's an issue, for lack of better terms, basically. And having conversations with staff, they thought it was fine that we communicate directly to the USBGN in regards to our recommendations, but that we also in some way, this is a process for informing the governor so that he is aware of that recommendation before it is forwarded on. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense for us to send it on, but my question was more, once the USBGN gets it, will they act on it if there's no recommendation from the governor?
Yeah, I think if this is our process, that we are articulating the process here, and so I'm assuming that they certainly would, that this is being part of the process that we've outlined in this document. To answer your question even more specifically, I can call on Jennifer Runyon. Ms. Runyon, if you, let me see,
Okay.
in the chat. Oh, there you are. Ms. Runyon, do you have a response to that?
Yes, thanks for the question. Really, that's up to you all. The fact that you're deciding to include the governor in the final review process is really a state business. I think that the BGN staff will probably like the clarification from you all. If it comes forward without the governor's recommendation, is that the state's official recommendation, or should we continue to wait? And I am concerned that proponents they'll be aware perhaps of your decision at a meeting, and they know the 10 days or time is clicking, and maybe we have a meeting coming up. Would need to know, is that your final recommendation, or must we sit on it until the governor weighs in? So that's for you all to answer. We'll vote on whatever you send us, but I don't want tentative packet or tentative approval. It's either you approve it or you don't. So that's up for you all to decide.
So I hear you saying that if that's our decision, that we don't have to wait for the governor, that we should say something in there that it is the final state decision.
Right.
Without anything. So
Yeah,
that makes
How do we maintain a system of checks and balances though with the governor, making sure, it doesn't need to be a by your leave, but we also want to keep him informed what we're bringing forward. Do we feel comfortable that we're creating space for that?
Yes, I think that this process, we do still need to communicate this with the governor, and so we will do that and provide a little bit extra clarification. But the intent in the conversations has been that this board was set up to provide those recommendations. I know the EO reads a little bit differently in terms of the governor, but the governor did appoint this board. And so we will work with that to clarify with the governor's office on this section here. And I think this is one of these things that I also think we may have to review, and we'll get a better understanding when we take the first couple of passes and understanding, what the time constraints and the interest are on that level. So we can bring that back. Ms. Beatty, I see you on. Do you have any comment?
I do. whatever we hear from the governor's office about process for the USBGN's purposes, we could add something to the final recommendation package that is the disposition of the governor. And then it will go up to USBGN with governor was provided this on this date. We didn't hear from him, or he thought it was great, or he sent it. We could just send an analysis along with that final recommendation package.
And I apologize, this is a little bit of me kind of holding this up perhaps. We haven't formally had that conversation to a detail like this necessarily. I was hoping to get through this document so that they could understand this process that we've identified, and then we can kind of square this portion up here with the office. I know that the governor's office, Jonathan Asher, is on right now. And Jonathan, I don't know if you had any comments about this or yourself, or if you want to weigh in or not.
You know, I think let's, if it is possible to kind of, you know, put a pin in this for right now, let's talk through it more, especially given, yeah, you know, some staff that are just back from maternity leave and stuff like that. It's probably worth just kind of double checking on this item. You know, I mean, Tim, when you and Amy and I have kind of talked about sort of the broader process before, yeah, you know, I don't know that we played, you know, chess to this level of, you know, right, potential, you know, outcomes, but we certainly can. I mean, I think given how it's structured, you know, our general understanding is that, you know, we would get the recommendation from the board, have a period of time to evaluate that, and then go back to the board, you know, more as a conversation about, hey, let's keep working on this or something like that. I don't know that we totally, you know, tried to think through a total stalemate situation, because I certainly hope that, yeah, we would never get to that position and continue to kind of work in a collaborative way. But we can kind of think through worst case scenarios if it's helpful and necessary for the you know, document here.
Okay, so we will, unless there's another recommendation that we would like to take to the governor's office, or if there's any comment, I appreciate the discussion around this, and so noted. Is there any other comments on this? Okay. Section 7, forwarding approved names. Again, this is laying out right now. The board administrator will send the final recommendation package by email to the USBGN. After all interested parties, including the board, have provided recommendations to the USBGN, and the USBGN's research is complete, the USBGN will add the proposal to the docket for their next monthly meeting for the final decision. All parties will be notified of the outcome of the USBGN's decision. If approved, the new name or name change will be recorded in the USBGN's Geographic Name Information System. Federal maps and other products are typically updated during the normal revision cycle. Recommendations made by the board to the USBGN are not considered official for local or state use until the USBGN has rendered its decision. And the board will report on the USBGN's progress and any decisions, the board meetings following the receipt of the information from the USBGN. So I know that this kind of identifies that USBGN process. I think it's helpful to at least keep it in this document for those that are interested in understanding the process and what this might look like. Ms. Runyon, I don't know if you had a comment about how that looks to you, but if so, we can work that out. But for my board members, for my colleagues here, any comment on this section? Okay. Appendix A. So Appendix A here, then community outreach is essential to conducting a successful process to consider a name change proposal. With that in mind, this list spells out recommended additional or more personal outreach or more personal outreach to be conducted when the board is considering a proposal and makes recommendations for board members who are in the best position to conduct this outreach. This is not designed to be an exhaustive or prescriptive list. It is designed to serve as a guide for consideration. The board should consider outreach to and by. And so we've got tribal governments with the board member occupying the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs seat to solicit input from any tribal governments in his or her discretion who should be consulted regarding the proposal. Local entities with a historical focus with the board member occupying the History Colorado seat to identify and solicit. Counties and or local jurisdictions in which the geographic feature is located with outreach from the board's designee determined on a case-by-case basis. Appropriate state agencies, including but not limited to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, with the outreach from the board's designee determined on a case-by-case basis. And then appropriate federal agencies, including but not limited to the Forest Service, Bureau of Rec, National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, Department of Defense. Again, from outreach from the board's designee determined on a case-by-case basis. And then property owners and community organizations with an interest in the geographic feature. Any comments, discussions on Appendix A? Representative Benavides.
Yeah, you know, we say the first part of it that this is the recommended additional or more personal outreach, but we never say what the community outreach, are you posting it on your website or anything like that, that maybe here for community outreach, we might add that you're going to be posting information on the website for community input and or something like that. Or is that somewhere else?
Help me understand a little bit. Is it on our website or would it be on the community's website?
I guess your website, DNR. I don't know where we're going to be putting information, where we put information now about these meetings, because the first sentence says it spells out recommended additional outreach. And I'm just saying, if it's additional, what's our main outreach? I'm guessing is on the website.
Okay, I see. Yes, so it is on the website. We also are developing a list of individuals that have expressed interest in the board's activities, to which we will send emails out that way, notifying them of the board's agenda and such. And then this is just the sort of very personal directed outreach that we would be extending directly to some of these individuals and organizations, obviously. But for the most part, yes, it is on our website in terms of what's being considered for each and every meeting. And then we send out an email, and we'll send out an email to that larger list.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is, since people will get this procedure, that we might want to say it there too.
Okay, okay. Is there any further comment, discussion?
Amy has her hand up, and also does Junie.
Okay, let me go with Junie. We'll take your comment first, then we'll go to Amy, if that's okay.
Thank you. It's not anything too big. I was just thinking, I don't fully understand Appendix A in the universe where it sits. You mentioned individual, but it says tribal government, local entities, counties, appropriate state agencies, appropriate federal agencies, and property owners and community organizations. And these seems more like fit under this umbrella of entities. And I was thinking maybe we could add individual experts in the field. And I think part of it is, my experience has been that sometimes there are people who are individual experts in the field who would like to contribute, but if they're not part of a system, they don't get to engage, and they have that contribution that they could offer to us. So I wanted to have them as part of this community outreach.
Okay, that makes, I think I understand what you're saying in terms of there's a particular expertise that is out there that we might recognize and want to reach out to, or specifically bring this to their attention. And so unless there's any concerns or comments, I think we can probably craft something along those lines. Miss Beatty?
Thanks, Tim. This is pretty pedestrian, but I just wanted to mention that Section 3A, Romanet 1 and 2 specify that initial outreach. It says all relevant information will be posted on the board website. And we're also reaching out to the proponent of the name change proposal to make sure that they're aware that the process for consideration of their proposal has begun. So we have specifically spelled out at least some initial outreach, and that would be a nice place if we needed to, where we could add something that said, you know, and sending to an email list or something like that.
Okay, we'll do that. And then we also do send out a press release as well regarding our meetings. Comments,
And
questions?
Karen has her hand up, Tim.
Ms. Berry, how are you?
Pretty good. You know, the last one, property owners and community organizations with an interest in the proposal, that to me is, it could be really broad. It could be just an adjacent property owner. It could be somebody 5 miles away. I wonder if we'd want to kind of rein that in a little bit, because I could see the community then expecting, you know, to get notification if they live a mile away, and that could get pretty onerous.
Yeah, that's that's an interesting comment, and I know that on another board that we have within DNR, we've got somewhat of a similar provision or recommendation, and there's always the question in terms of who is, what's that level of interest, or how far is that radius extend to? So I think that's a good question. Remind me, did you have a recommendation in terms of editing this language?
No, I mean, I could give you similar examples that I've seen in other areas, mostly with like local governments, but you know.
Could we, I wonder, to your point on this one, property owners and community organizations here, this is basically a list that we're just kind of identifying of folks, hey, it's kind of a checkoff list that, hey, who else do we need to do some specific outreach to? And then maybe would it be better to kind of clarify that with property owners and community organizations with an interest in the geographic feature as identified by the board? Because I think this is the board that kind of stepping back and saying, who else do we need to reach out to, and what does that look like, and provide the consideration to? And so it's kind of on a case-by-case basis in some respects. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would be fine.
So, and then we would, I think it'd be the similar language then also with outreach from the board's designee determined on a case-by-case basis. Gonna lay it out that way. Ms. Joseph.
Yes, I think just from hearing from the discussion, property owner and community members, to me, based on the discussion that we're having and just looking at Appendix A, they don't fit in the same paragraph. And I think, as Karen mentioned, maybe property owners within, I don't know, 10 miles from the geographic feature that we are considering at the moment, or within 20, however that long, because I think this idea of property owner, it could be someone who's 1,000 miles away. So I think it gives people a sense where the boundaries are. And I think Karen's, somehow her view and her perspective actually, I thought was right. Just thinking that let's put some perimeters around the property owners.
Let me give you an example here, in just a quick reminder that this isn't prescriptive. This just spells out a recommended additional. But I think in terms of the other board, this is one of the things that we kind of, some of the things we bump up against. So let's take, there's a particular mountaintop And there's obviously some people that live below it, within a mile or two or along the road leading up to the top. You would expect that they would certainly be interested in some respects, but you could also think about, you know, those that have a view that might live 5 miles away might have some level of interest for, I think, probably a generalization in terms of determining that. And that's kind of why I went back to including that language, determined on a case by case, so that the marker actually is, are there property owners and community organizations that we feel have an interest in the geographic feature that we ought to identify? And that's where we identify those individuals specifically. And that could at that time be we could prescribe a sort of radius if we need to, or what that might look like. Does that kind of make sense to help sort that out?
Thank you.
So with that, like I said, I'd kind of keep it on the determined on a case-by-case basis, where we're sitting down and kind of say, hey, these are some property owners, community organizations that come to mind that we would identify that have that, and we can have that discussion. And I imagine that, you know, this is public input, so obviously we would like to aim high in terms of that level of public outreach. So I don't know that I would anticipate in any level that we probably, if an individual board member were to identify a property owner or a group, I can't imagine a scenario where we would think that, hey, we wouldn't go along and provide that outreach specifically to that individual or group. Does that make sense? I think this is pretty open, and that we want to be very liberal with our public outreach. Any other thoughts? Okay. With that, anything else to Appendix A? All right, on to Appendix B. This Appendix B here, as you recall, kind of lays out the certain factors and the criteria upon which we would consider in regards to a naming decision. Proposals containing the following characteristics will be discouraged. And we lay out offensive and derogatory names. I think that's pretty clear there. The board will deny any proposals that it deems offensive or derogatory, especially if the proposal is offensive towards any racial, ethnic, gender, or religious group. Duplicate names, the use of duplicate names for similar types of geographic features within a county or close proximity should be minimized or avoided unless overridden by other considerations such as dominant local usage. Commercial names, and then wilderness names. Any comments on just that in terms of what will be discouraged?
I have just one comment. In the first part, it does say the derogatory names, and it names, you know, racial, ethnic, gender, or religious. I wonder if we could just say tribal nations as well, because it's not technically a racial or ethnic group, that they have their own political status.
And so, I'm sorry, Catherine, is that, I'm sorry, or tribal nations?
Yes. Tribal, I think we'll go with tribal nations.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's fine. Any comments regarding that?
That
Okay.
be put? I'm sorry. Where are you suggesting, Catherine, that be put?
Under the first proposal containing the following characteristics to be discouraged, under the offensive and derogatory names, just to specifically call out tribes as I don't know, we have a national park, Arapahoe National Park. I'm not sure if that's a derogatory or not, right? But I don't want to state on whether a tribe's perspective on that, and we're not under, our tribes are not under like that racial or ethnic category.
But you're thinking of it as a separate bullet point, not under the derogatory.
No, it'd be, I guess initially I was thinking under the, it's under the offensive or derogatory names. Because we're saying what we would discourage.
I would like to ask for some clarity.
Yes.
And I think it's because of the comment about the racial, ethnic, gender, and religious groups. It's offensive language that have to do with racial, ethnic, gender, or religious group. It's not essentially, for instance, you just mentioned Arapahoe. If someone wanted a mountain named Arapahoe, that's not the challenge. It's the fact that maybe from the tribal nation, there is like a word that is derogatory. Is that where we're heading? Because in my mind, offensive and derogatory terms that relates to racial, ethnic, gender, and religious groups, as opposed to a group itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I wasn't going, I guess, like any sort of derogatory. Thank you for the clarification. And maybe it does need to be its own bullet point, like not too, I appreciate the conversation. You know, I don't necessarily, if a non-tribal individual or entity proposes a name to be named after a tribe, you know, I think it would then definitely go under the proposals, the proposal would be to reach out to that tribal government to see if it's okay. I think there's a fine line of, you know, because I said Arapahoe, like Arapahoe County, I don't know if we should be naming things after tribal governments if it's not proposed by the tribe themselves.
What about the first bullet, Catherine, on indigenous names? Add a sentence to that to say if it's named after a tribal nation, that it would have to be done only with permission of that nation.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. If it's a proposed, then it's proposed by the tribal nation. I just don't want to get, I think when we start thinking of non-native or non-tribal individuals or organizations proposing such names without having permission or from tribal nations, then we really get into that line of opening up the door to using names without permissions, I guess.
Let me go to Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, I was wondering if maybe we could reframe it instead of saying not having it coming from tribal nation, maybe saying something in consultation with, because maybe someone have a great idea, but it happens to be someone who's not from a tribal nation and they bring it forward. Instead of knocking it down, we could say, well, you can't just bring it forward without being in consultation with, as opposed to you just can't bring it. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, and then, so I really do appreciate the conversation, because then it brings it back, we're like, all right, so this is the proposal, and then we just go back to the proposal process. And then we ensure that the tribes are consulted on that name. So, which brings me back, and maybe we need to include it if we're going to include it in our process, that we consult with the tribes in order, because again, what if the tribe would be, yes, fantastic, let's name this mountain after our tribe for sure. So I scratched my first proposal.
Let me call on Miss Runyon. She might have some experience in this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it started off as a simple question, I believe, in that Director Redhorse was talking about adding simply "or tribal nations" to the end of that first bullet. Her suggestion was that tribal nations are not considered race or ethnic groups, or obviously gender or religious groups. I think she was suggesting simply that any the sentence be changed, any racial, ethnic, gender, religious group, or tribal nation. She was asking to separate out tribal from the other four broad
And then
groups.
I think, I'm sorry to cut you off, because I don't know necessarily it's in the, I don't want to say like a tribal nation's name is offensive or derogatory either. That's not where I'm getting at. I think it was just sort of in that consultation piece of it. So then it brings me back to the whole process, and I apologize for going in this huge circle on a Friday evening nonetheless. So I do appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. No, I think you were on the right track, and certainly those 4 words in the first bullet came right from the US BGN's principle and policy, and I guess we assume that tribes are considered ethnic groups. I know it's not a racial group, but they are ethnic groups. So we just always assumed ethnic covers tribal groups, but I would say.
And I guess maybe that's my point, is that I just want to comment that tribes and indigenous people are not considered in the racial ethnic group, but we do not have to consider it in this particular statement because it's not offensive or derogatory either, right? And so,
well, I think again, this is referring
to make that comment.
No, this is all good. Again, I think this is referring to proposals that will likely not be approved, or will, in this case, will be discouraged. It's in our context, it's implied that we will not accept a proposal that is clearly offensive to any one of those groups. We would not accept new proposal today to apply the name Squaw Mountain to an unnamed peak. It's one thing to change an existing name, but we would not accept a new proposal for that name or any other derogatory word that we felt was going to be derogatory to any one of those, to a race, to an ethnic, gender group, or religious group. So kind of right off the bat, we say we will not accept that. The question of consultation with tribes is, I think, a whole separate section in this guidance. And certainly, yes, we're having the same conversation about if we get a proposal that's clearly for the name of a tribe, somebody wants to name Arapaho Mountain, shouldn't we consult with the Arapaho? Well, yes, we should, because we're asking almost permission of the Arapaho to use their name on that peak. You could argue that they're already being consulted by virtue of the rest of this process anyway, but or if it's a name that's of native origin, should we go to the linguists in that group, in that tribe, to verify that it's correct? So I think it's
call on, yeah, that's good. Let me call on Council Member Joseph.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, maybe that tribal nation names, any racial, ethnic, or nationality, gender, or religious group. So I'm thinking maybe tribal nations fit under nationality. So maybe if we add that word, that could cover it as well.
Thanks. Catherine?
I agree with that, nationality. And then I think it's up to us to educate that that's where tribal nations would be considered if we were to break up those categories. Because to Ms. Runyon's just comments that, right, that we normally, I think we place tribes into that racial or ethnic category when they're not, they have that special political status with the country itself.
Okay, so it sounds like Junie's recommendation is to add nationality, but especially if the proposal is offensive to any nationality, racial, ethnic, gender, religious group. Catherine, you're okay with that kind of incorporates your concern and gets at what you were discussing? Or do you still want to have offensive towards tribal nations in there?
I'm okay with having a nationality, and I think tribal nations can be under that category itself.
Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Good with that? Ms. Limerick?
I would just say that the word sovereignty seems so important, and I understand that that doesn't fit in the categorizations, that it wouldn't be parallel to any of the others. And this may, at some point we'll figure out a way to get American non-Indian people to be more aware of sovereignty, but I've been listening to this hoping that there was a way to really get that acknowledgement of a different it's part of federalism, but it's often ignored when we do the federal, state, county thing. So I was trying to have a clever moment, which I have not had, but I really support the notion. I mean, I'm just wondering when we say different nationalities, I'm not even sure what that means, but I'm so willing to say that I haven't figured this out. And Catherine's point that having the word nationality in there gives us the occasion to keep offering the reminder that that is where the tribal folks are. So I'm so glad I took up your time on a Friday to say that I hadn't been able to figure anything out, but I want to support what Catherine is saying, that this is an important distinction to make. So done.
Okay. No, that's perfect. That's a great comment. And if you do figure it out, let us know.
I'm calling a special meeting. If I figure this out, I am just, I don't care where we are, but I'll call that meeting, but don't worry about that right now.
Thank you. Jonathan.
And Tim, just a quick question / point of clarification. So Ms. Runyon noted that for USGBN that kind of really actually had some weight to it, like kind of automatically disqualified things here. I think here we're just kind of discouraging. Is that correct, or is there an actual kind of action associated with this category of proposals?
This is identifying up front in our process, and obviously it reiterates what's in the USBGM, but also I think some considerations, and that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of our own process of what will be discouraged in terms of proposals. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess what I was hearing from Jennifer was that for the USGBN, it's less of a discouragement, more of an actual action. And for us, we're more kind of sending a signal to the public of what we prefer not to see, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, it will automatically be, excluded or something like that. So if there's a proposal, I guess what I'm trying to say is if there's a proposal that the board receives that is sort of in a gray area, the board will still have the ability to kind of evaluate that based on that gray area or merits. Whereas maybe for the USGBN, it's more of a hard line. And my understanding is here, we're not really drawing so much of a hard line, more of a statement of preference and discouragement.
So, that's a good point. And so real quick, and then I'll go to Representative Benavides, and then we'll seek Ms. Runyon's advice. Should we just also eliminate especially out of that line there? So offensive and derogatory names, the board will deny any proposal that it deems to be offensive or derogatory if the proposal is offensive anyway. So you just remove the especially altogether. Are we okay with that? What do we think about that? Yes, Representative.
I think it's that title, it's proposals will be discouraged, but that one says we will deny those. And the third bullet point also says we will not approve commercial names. So maybe we could leave them and at the title of that section say proposals containing the following characteristics will be discouraged and or denied. Because you've got two bullets where we're denying and two where we're discouraging.
I like that. I think that characterizes. Ms. Runyon?
Well, given that all proposals have to come to the BGN first, we will be the ones doing the denying even before you ever see it, right? So I don't know that the board, the Colorado board, will ever see these. If it comes into the US board first and we determine that it is offensive, we won't even pass it along to you for recommendation. We won't even accept it. So I think in some ways that will be discouraged. And then as Representative Benavides said there, you've got discouraged, and then you talk about deny, not approve, deny. If you're going to deny it, that's stronger than disapproval, or discourage, I should say. Again, I go back to my first point, is if they come to us first, and well, certainly the offensive and derogatory names, and I would even pare that one down to that it deems to be offensive or derogatory towards any nationality, racial, so on and so forth. You can take out the, if the proposal is offensive. You've got it almost redundant there anyway. But again, if it's offensive or derogatory and it comes to us, you'll never see it. So it's always you're repeating the BGN's processes here, but you're expecting us to do the initial vetting. So
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I also think to the extent that those may come to understand our process as well, or look to this organization in terms of naming proposals, and then sort of this kind of reiterates obviously what the USBGN states, but I think also specific then to this board in terms of determining what we might deem offensive or derogatory. But I think we kind of have a double approach here, and that's fun. But I do recognize what you're saying about just going to, if the board will deny any proposal that it deems to be offensive or derogatory, that it deems to be towards any national. So yeah, take out the especially if the proposal is.
Yeah. And you're right. It's quite possible that we get a proposal that we deem to be okay to proceed, send it on to you all, and you all decide it's offensive or derogatory. And then you would still have the option of essentially overruling the BGN. At that point, you could say, the BGN might have accepted it and you all say no. So it's certainly valuable to have it in there. So I'm not going to argue that it needs, I mean, anytime you can repeat something like that, it's never a bad idea. No, I do see the point though about the discourage and then deny in the same paragraph. Which is it? I guess maybe may deny or may not approve.
Let me call on Mr. Garcia here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an overall observation, and I appreciate the clarification Ms. Runyon provided as a reminder that all applications start at that level. But and I think this is an important statement to make for the broader public's consumption and understanding. So I'm wondering if we could just clarify maybe in the earlier paragraph or sentence of the appendix that, that the application process does begin at the USBGYN, and we recognize that that's where it starts. However, we are embracing these values in our review as a local Colorado-based advisory group, that these are principles, call them that, or that we want to stand behind, just because I think that's important that the public knows that, even though we may never see something that come from the federal level at all that's going to meet any of these expectations.
Right. That's a valid point. Yeah. As I said, you certainly have the right, and it's probably wise to have it there, stated there, because people aren't going to necessarily read this and the federal board's policies too. So it needs to be probably repeated. It's probably no harm in leaving it in, certainly.
Yeah.
So yeah, why not?
I agree with Rick's point there, especially that this deserves its own mention also within our process here. Any comments? We okay with Rick Garcia's comment there to kind of further elaborate on that? Ms. Benavides, Representative Benavides.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with keeping them both in, but I think the title of that section has to be changed from discourage, because it's not only that first bullet point, but the third on commercial names that we're also going to deny. So I think we need to say in the title of that section that we're going to discourage and or deny these bullet points.
I agree with you. I think we can make that. Everybody's good with that, right? Perfect. Director Garcia, did you want us to kind of come up with some of that clarifying language, or do you have something you want to specifically recommend?
I probably could come up with something, but not on the fly. I think if the general idea of what I suggested can maybe be drafted for inclusion and consideration, I don't think there's broad opposition to that. I think it's just making it clear for the public that they know that this process doesn't start at the Colorado level, but despite that, we still very much are embracing these overall principles. And I do agree with Representative Benavides that we should include deny as well as discourage in the title.
Okay. Council Member Joseph.
Yes, I just wanted to add, I do agree with Representative Benavides, and I was thinking you ask for some maybe guidance on drafting, maybe discourage would be, is that the first tier, and then proposal containing the following characteristics will be discouraged. And then the next two bullet points that are denied, you can say proposal containing the following characteristic will be denied. So you just have, you separate these two characterization or characteristics.
Thoughts? We can play around with that in addition to Director Garcia's kind of language, and then kind of break that down. I think that just breaks that all down. The other question I have, not to kind of start over here on the conversation, but just want to bring it up. Does it make sense to just say proposals containing the following characteristics? Obviously, there's the title, will be discouraged and or denied. And then offensive and derogatory names. The board will deny any proposal that it deems to be offensive or derogatory, period, and leave it there at the board's direction, or do we feel that we want to include those qualifiers? Thoughts?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
My view is that I think the qualifiers are pretty essential to, our general principles. We're in a time in our nation, certainly, we're focusing on these issues of racial reckoning and other considerations in that general venue. I think it's important that we absolutely state those characteristics.
Okay. Everybody good with that? Okay. Are we ready to move on from this section, or is there any final comments? Okay. The next section here, the board will consider the following for each proposal. Indigenous names. Proponents should provide appropriate evidence of the historical significance of the proposed name, as well as its relationship to the geographic feature. The dominant local usage, historical significance, family kinship, trust lands, and proposals made to eliminate existing name problems, as in the case of offensive or derogatory names, commemorative names, and then you go through that detail. I'll just kind of open this section up here. Any comments, questions, thoughts? And if not hearing any, we can move on.
I have one thought. Sorry, Tim.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. There you are.
I was trying to unmute myself. Just in terms of the indigenous names, I wonder if we could add historical or current significance. I feel like we always place indigenous populations to that historical, but sometimes we do have current. I just want to add that in if that's okay. So it would be proponent should provide appropriate evidence of the historical or current significance of the proposed name, as well as its relationship to the geographic feature.
Okay, thoughts? We good? Looks like we're good. Okay, Ms. Runyon?
Rather than dominant local usage, we tend to use present day local usage, which kind of covers the current usage. I mean, dominant is very subjective. if you interview 100 people and 51 say it's this, really you're just looking for present day usage or present day acceptance. So I don't know whether dominant is too hard to quantify.
Thoughts on the board on this matter?
I agree with that suggestion as well.
Okay, Representative, you're good with that also?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we'll switch that to present day.
If I might, I have one more thought that just kind of came to mind. This section starts with sort of kind of the negatives. This is what we are not going to accept. And then you go on to what we will accept. Would it be a little bit more, I don't know, have the positives first and then end it with the what we will not accept? It looks like that might have been the way it was originally and got moved. So maybe there was a valid reason why you want to weed out certain ones first. But I don't know, it just seems a little bit more positive approach if you say what you will accept. But again, that's just a thought. I don't know if it makes any sense.
Thoughts?
I like it. It's strength-based.
Okay.
Again, there was probably a reason why it got moved by somebody, so I don't want to necessarily contradict a decision somebody made to move it up front. Oh, folks asked last time. Okay. All right, never mind. I'll be quiet.
Okay. Well, after having a month to consider this in the last conversation, do we have any?
Ignore what I said.
Yeah, do we have any strong feelings here? We can keep the order here, or if we'd like to go back to what we will consider first. Council Member Joseph.
Do we know why the previous change was made?
No, I do think we had a bit of a conversation here. I don't recall it off the top. I'd have to go back and revisit that. But I do think that we had a conversation last time around that about stating what we weren't accepting first. Commissioner Shimino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not remembering why we made this switch, I do like Ms. Runyon's recommendation. We should probably, unless I can be reminded why we changed it last month, let's say what we'll accept first and then say what we won't. It is a better order, unless we could remember why.
Okay, we all good with that? Thumbs up? Okay, we'll start out with that. Now we're gonna have to have a conversation about where we place other considerations. I don't know where that comes in the order there, but moving on to that, Dr. Gonzalez, is that your hand up?
Yes.
Yes,
it is. I really hate to take us back to that first bullet point in green here, but I'm a little worried about the list of qualifiers excluding different identity groups that are now starting, now more and more vocal. So I was initially thinking that, oh yeah, we could just state, what you had suggested, just stop after offensive or derogatory names. But I see Rick Garcia's point that the qualifiers are important at this time in history. And so I'm wondering if we need to add more qualifiers like sexual orientation or disability status or something like and other identity groups or something like that, because we're excluding some groups that I think are important to include.
thoughts, comments, recommendations from the board?
How would we put that in with language that says all inclusive? How do you codify? Because I get the point for sure. I mean, inclusive of race, creed, gender, orientation. I mean, I would assume we could get language that that has that.
Right.
If I can add, that might be why you had especially, because those were examples And by taking out the especially, you've essentially said it's got to fit one of those 5 buckets now.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Gonzalez is right that, you know, by removing especially, you're almost like limiting yourself now. So
Okay.
yeah, I think someone needs to rework that whole thing, and there may be some state guidance already on inclusion that you can paraphrase. It's got to be.
Oh, there has to be.
Yeah.
There's got to be.
Yeah. So I would just give someone an action item to go look for the actual official state. It's got to be state wording and all kinds of guidance nowadays. So rather than wrangle with it here, I mean, just my thought is have someone do the homework and find it.
Councilmember Joseph, did you have your hand up? Okay. All right, we will take another look and see if there's some other language here. We'll put the especially back in, is what I'm hearing, but we can also think if there's, take a look if there's some other considerations or some other way to phrase this or open this up a little bit to Dr. Gonzalez's point. Is that okay? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, now on to back onto the other considerations. And I'll just give you a second here. Is there any comments regarding the other consideration section? Give you just a second here to kind of review those. Do we need more time? We still reviewing, or we're all good there? Ms. Runyon?
Thank you, Tim. Looking at the 4th bullet, talks about revisiting previous decisions, and it talks about that decisions would very rarely be considered again in less than 5 years. And then there's a follow-on, a name change proposal should identify the existing name and the feature ID from the GNIS. Those seem like very different concepts, different thoughts, different, seems a little odd that they're kind of in the same paragraph. I mean, the identify the name and the feature ID almost belongs further up at the top where you're, in fact, again, that'll come to us, you know, I mean, clearly you need to know what is being renamed. So obviously they identify the name and the ID, but it seems a little odd to be under the revisiting decisions part.
Amy, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you. I think we dropped a bullet point somewhere along the way in the editing.
That's what
Thanks for catching that.
Okay, so revisiting the previous decisions, that's one bullet point, and then a name change proposal should identify as the second bullet point in there. Okay, we're all good with this section here. All right, this puts us at the end of this document. We've got a few more edits to we'll make some revisions that we discussed today. Very good discussion. I really do appreciate all the input here. So it was nice to work through this. We will also make sure that we visit with the governor's office in regards to that component. Next steps here. So I wonder if this might be a legal question. One of the things we discussed was, now that we have a process somewhat in place here, do we want to, is it a temporary approval, or maybe that's a legal question for the AG's office, or we approve these in some way, or that we start just kind of informally acknowledge them and walk through some proposals so we can track and see how this process that we laid out works. Ms. Beatty?
You're fine to take these out for a test drive without formally adopting them. You know, there are other entities that work in this space that have less detail around what their process will look like. this is a great guide. And I think rather than adopting them and then having to revise them again later through a formal process, you can test them out, kick the tires, figure out if anything needs to be modified, and then figure out what you want to do.
Thoughts, comments, questions? Are we good taking these for a test drive? Okay. Ms. Runyon.
Always got to add my thoughts, right? Just this is maybe a conversation really more perhaps just with you and maybe with Johnny and Amy. Looking at the guidance, I mean, it's a wonderful document, and I think you know, you're right. Until you go through a test drive and do a few cases, it's hard to say how this will all play out. There's an awful lot of things that the Colorado board is taking on, and believe me, you know, I love the fact that you're agreeing to do all this additional outreach. You've got yourself a lot of expectations here. A lot of what you're asking to do in some ways overlaps or duplicates what we traditionally have done. I just think maybe it needs to be stated somewhere that you and we will coordinate on the outreach, because, for example, federal agencies, we automatically will consult with the Forest Service or the Park Service as part of our requirement, because our public law says, you know, public lands, public agencies we will consult with. My concern is there's going to be an overlap where you're reaching out to a Forest Service person and so are we, and we're getting potentially conflicting information. Again, we are required to consult with tribes by sending out the review list notice every quarter, and you all are doing tribal outreach too. Right now we are contacting the counties, and apparently so will you. So I just want to make sure that somehow it's stated that we will coordinate and share our processes, so that, again, we don't overlap and duplicate effort and get conflicting information and have to go back and say, well, who officially spoke for the county? So I don't know if it needs to be stated somewhere, but, or at least understood by all of us here.
I think another point to that would be that people approach us as well. So it will be somewhat, I think, also, how do we make sure that we're bringing questions that we've gotten from the general public or from within our network, to make sure that everyone in this body understands the questions that we're getting asked, because I think that's going to start happening more as well, and it's already happened, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
Attorney General Beatty.
That is also factored into the reason why we use that language, additional or more personal outreach, that paragraph at the top of Appendix A, where we talk about the outreach that we'll do. And then it also says specifically that that list is not designed to be prescriptive. If the board believes that the outreach has already been done effectively by the USBGN, then I don't think the board will feel the need to duplicate that outreach, but they may also want to do something very specific, tailored, and customized because of the special nature of a proposal. So it's not prescriptive, it's permissive, and we also are aware that it is additional outreach based on outreach that may already have occurred throughout the process. Okay. I hope that helps.
It helps a lot. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. The fact that it's not a given for every proposal that this is what you will do. It'll be case by case and as needed. And an example might be, we've reached out to the county, gotten no response, followed up a second time. You know, then you can then pick up the phone and call your county contact and say, we understand you didn't respond to the BGN. We would like your input. And you probably know the county folks better certainly than we do. So maybe you can be that final nudge that we weren't able to achieve. So yeah, I think it's kind of implied that, yeah, that we will share everything with you, and certainly true. We're all going to be getting comments as soon as the word gets out that you all are members of this Colorado board. Each one of you are going to be approached by proponents, whether it's in the hallway after a meeting, whether it's just pick up the phone and call you. And you're right, it is a challenge to share any feedback you get outside a board meeting. And I know you're trying to keep it so that it all happens in a board meeting, but believe me, you know, you'll be getting calls and emails by virtue of your role on this board now, and how you want to handle that should probably be addressed. You know, do you say, sorry, I can't accept your comments, refer them to the board administrator, please, or send them to the BGN? I don't know what the process might be. But yeah, certainly sharing anything you get with everybody becomes a real challenge, you know, keeping track of who said what to whom and when.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good conversation. I just also want to real quick recognize Representative Will. Good to see you there. I hope you're enjoying a beautiful drive back home after a long week. So good to see you. Okay, so we've made it through this document. We'll take another couple once and twice overs here, and we'll get back another draft that's cleaned up to the board. So with that in mind, and we've expressed that we would like to, we're ready to take this for a test drive. Let me open this up then to AG Beatty, if you wouldn't mind entertaining a question here. When we think about our timeline now, I know that we still wanted to do the board training, but the boards and commissions training. So I think we'll do that in April. But I'm also wondering in terms of timeline then, as we see this, are we ready to begin that first step with a proposal or two in terms of the initial proposal or the proposal introduction? And can we do that in April in terms of reading that kind of across the board here, or do we have enough on our hands regarding the boards and commissions training for that April meeting?
I hope to be very concise but very helpful with the board training. I think you will have time on the agenda, assuming you want to do another 2-hour meeting, to take a proposal or two out for a test drive.
How do we feel about that? We're ready for to get down to business? All right. I really appreciate everybody's work. This is actually exciting that we're to this point. So we will, I think, head there. Let me just check in real quick. Miss Abad, can you just let me know if there's anything that I might be missing in terms of that April meeting that we've got to consider? Or are we good to start talking about starting up some proposals?
No, we're good to talk about starting up some proposals. I'm ready.
Cool. Okay, that's great. Then we will go ahead and do that. Any more comment regarding the process document then? Okay, we will get a cleaner draft provided here. So then I will move on to agenda item 6. Is there any public comment? Please raise your hand in the button. Or Johnny, have you identified anybody that would like to make some public comment this evening?
Okay. Tim's got a comment.
Tim, would you mind stating your first and last name and where you live? That'd be great. Welcome.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for the chance for the public comment. My name is Tim Swales. I'm living in Denver. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, voice some opinions I had based on the conversation. I thought that the comment about the property owners, kind of who, like the proximity of the property owners, like I know living in Denver, I see like all these kind of peaks and mountains every day, even though, I don't really own property up against them. So I think that's also important to consider, like you don't necessarily have to own property there for it to kind of impact you and have a stake in it. And then, I wanted to just kind of voice my support for, I know there's that proposal for the Mount Evans being changed to Mount Blue Sky. And I've kind of talked with, friends, family, colleagues, and it's a very, unscientific poll, but I think people are pretty generally into it. And then also wanted just to voice my support for working with contemporary tribes who have historic ties in Colorado kind of across the board. And those were my public comments. Thanks for the time.
We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and for your public comment. Thank you. Any additional public comment? All right, seeing none, we will close public comment. I do not believe we need an executive session. We will then work to, oh, yes, Representative Benavides.
So we went quickly over next meeting and looking at some proposals. Can you talk about that and when we'll get those proposals and what we should do?
Yeah, so that's a very good point here. So what we will do here, I think, you know, going back to the process, generally speaking, the board administrator, Ms. Abed, will place the proposal on the agenda, and we'll introduce that proposal for review by the board. We will also prepare a brief informational summary to the board members. Before that, I think is really kind of what you're getting at. We are going to sit down with Ms. Runyon to identify some proposals that are ready from the USBGN's perspective that they've already worked through. And we'll identify those and which ones we think we can kind of fit, or I guess might have, I think we will have in a conversation with Ms. Runyon, some identification in terms of the complexity of some of the proposals in the state that they're in, and that it sounds like there are some proposals that may have already gotten some of the clearances or approvals from or input from tribes, from county commissioners and such. And so that's what we're going to kind of take a lead on, if that's okay. Does that answer your question, Representative?
Yes, it does. So we'll get it, though, at least a week or so ahead of time to look over.
Yes, we will work with Jennifer to get that all, and then yeah, get that queued up so that you've got plenty of time in advance of the conversation. And so then that April meeting, we will start out with the boards and commissioners training, and then introduce what I suspect the proposal or two. How does that sound? And then is there anything else, any other questions or comments or considerations for the April meeting? When that will be, we will put out another, Johnny will put together a doodle poll. Yeah, there you go, thanks. Put together another doodle. I know that we're interested in kind of setting some dates and times. We are also in the middle of the legislative session, and we're trying to be flexible with everybody. So I think right now the case by case kind of basis is working for the time being. We'll run some dates and times here. Representative Benavides or Representative Will, is there any time looking at the April kind of month in terms of your schedules that still work or don't work? We'll have to look at the doodle poll probably.
Yeah, I think it's most meetings, and just depends. I don't know everybody's committee assignments are. I know mine's Monday, Wednesday, and Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday are bad. But then we have more floor work on Thursdays and Fridays, so there's just nothing for sure. Yeah. I would say if it's at all possible, and I hate to impose this on everybody, but I know we want to move on some of these. Sometimes weekends might be easier, especially in April and May for us. Okay. I don't know what you think, Perry. You're on mute, though.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Representative.
Okay. So, and I have Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays pretty much. So on committee stuff, and you know, it just depends on the bill. I mean, sometimes we're out of committee fairly quickly, and other times we run way into the night. So it's really hard to predict. But so I don't know. I mean, and you know, that like this Friday didn't work very good for me because I'm driving back, and then I had to wait till I get a decent cell signal. So I thought I'd be in better shape, but I wasn't. So I mean, I'm typically, I mean, where I'm driving back on Fridays is a little tough, but because you know, I don't want to hang in Denver till these are over to head home. See, so plus I had to be back tonight anyway. So
Yeah, no, definitely drive safe, have a safe trip home. We'll send a number of dates and times. I think that there are some other individuals that have work constraints also during the time. So we're going to try and balance this out, but we'll send out that doodle poll.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, is there any other comments, considerations matter before the board?
Tim, this is very well, but I'm excited to get started on working on a couple proposals. I think once we get in that process, we'll learn a lot of stuff just working through a couple. So I'm excited to do that, actually.
Yeah, I think so too, and really appreciate everybody's work and patience as we've kind of worked to get to this point. Again, really also want to thank Johnny and Lindsay and Amy and Chris that have also put in a significant amount of time on your ends, and we really appreciate that support. So thank you very much, and thank you, board members, for a Friday evening. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have a nice weekend. Safe weekend, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you.
So long.